What's up, guys? Just a quick FYI, in this video there's lots of chatting and stuff, so if you're just here to listen to some poker hands, skip ahead to this number. That's where you'll find them. All right, roll the footage. Back in Vegas, and it's a little windy out there on the roof here at the parking structure at the Wynn. So, gonna chat in the car for a little bit. How's that sound? So yeah, good to be back. That month of April, man, that was a hectic one. Even before April, we were in Reno, followed that up with Barcelona, followed that up with Sacramento, one night in Vegas, immediately off to Montreal. Great time in Montreal, but it is really good to be back in Las Vegas. It's the poker dream, you know? It's the dream that you sort of have in mind when you first get started playing poker. Be able to travel the world, work wherever you want, play poker wherever you want in all these different locations. And that's awesome. It's also awesome to work with companies that you really respect, that are operating correctly in the poker space. But it can also be a bit too much sometimes. When you're deviating from your strong suit, it can be a little bit much to take on all at once. What's my strong suit? My strong suit is, you know, these 2-5, 5-10 cash games, whether that's in Las Vegas or elsewhere. It's really cool to be able to show you guys different locations, and it's awesome to be able to experience those different locations. But when I'm making videos on the road, there's that deviation, and tough to get out of a downswing when you are you know, trying all these different things, capturing all these different things. So yeah, good to be home, but sadly the downswing continues. Had a meetup game this past Wednesday, lost some money. It was a really good time. Got to meet a bunch of new people, saw some familiar faces. It's cool to have some of you guys be regulars at the meetup games, and it's also cool to meet lots of new people. Had some people in from Australia, a couple people from England, and obviously all over the States as well. Another thing to update you guys on, you may or may not have heard, but one cool development comes out of the online poker world, and that is that the player pools between Nevada and New Jersey are now merged. So that's pretty cool. It's a pretty decent sized change for us in Nevada. I'm not sure how big of a change it is for the people in New Jersey, but really cool to start that process of merging the player pools, and that's gonna be way better than just having each state ring fenced. It brings me to another topic. As we are sitting here on the roof of the Wynn, I'm looking at another property, one that has thus far been a property that shall not be named.
We do not speak his name. Voldemort.
I don't think I've even mentioned it on the vlog once. Maybe not. I don't recall. But clearly, obviously, that property is the Venetian.
Don't use that name.
I get the occasional question about why I never play at the Venetian. It's a good question. It's a good question because that is a very nice poker room. The staff there is great. The dealers are great. Really nice property. I also have like a really good friend or two that works there. So why I never play there is because the owner of that property is a man named Sheldon Adelson. The online poker landscape here in the United States has sort of been drastically held back. And if there's anybody that you can point to that would be responsible for that, it would be the owner of said property. That's sort of the main reason why I didn't really want to give them any free PR. He has his reasons and motivations, but when you are trying to keep online poker out of people's living rooms, so to speak, all you're really doing is pushing those people into the black market. People who want to play online poker, they're going to play online poker. We know there are several options as far as unregulated poker sites here in the US, and who knows whether your money is safe on those sites or not. It's not really a question of having online poker or not having online poker. It's a question of having regulated, safe online poker or black market online poker. Sheldon Adelson seems to think that black market online poker is the way to go for the US. I disagree, and therefore just kind of chose not to give any free publicity to that property here on the blog. Do I blame people for playing there? No, not at all. I've played there plenty of times. If you go and look at my Hendon Mob results, you'll see I have a couple caches. They have a tournament series multiple times a year. It's one of the premier ones here in Vegas. They always have a decent number of cash games over there. So there you go, Venetian. Gave you a shout out, but just wanted to explain what the reasoning is for never seeing them here. And it's cool to see some things happening in the online poker space, despite Sheldon Adelson's wishes, apparently. But pretty cool that now we can play across states here in Nevada. So yeah, I think that's all the updates for now. Surely there's more stuff. But like I said, great to be back in Vegas. Let's get out of this car. Let's get into the poker room here at the Wynn and go play some cash games. .3:17 in the morning. We ended up putting in the old classic long proper session, cash game session. Feeling slightly run down, so rather than go through these hand histories tonight, I already have a place in mind to take you tomorrow to go over some hands. It's definitely too windy to go over them out there, and we've already spent this entire vlog in this car. So tomorrow, hand histories, I already have a place in mind. See you there. For me, it's like, you know, going to sleep and then waking up, but for you, it's right. Guys, how appropriate is this? This is a poker-themed brewery. This is Blvd Brewing. We're down here in a little town known as Henderson, Nevada. It's a little bit ways off the strip. It's probably take you 20 minutes to get here, but I think it's pretty cool. If you like beer and you like poker, this is probably gonna make a lot of sense to you. Come check this place out. A bunch of games. They got an old school Nintendo set up. They got shuffleboard. They got oversized Jenga. Definitely worth coming and check this one out. And you know, haven't even mentioned the beers yet. All the beers, or just about all of them, are poker themed as well. All right, let's run through some poker hands from last night so you guys can get the gist of that session. But FYI, a lot of them are going to be kind of straightforward, but I do think even in these straightforward hands, I think there's a lesson to be learned. So we were playing 2-5 at the Wynn, and one lesson right off the bat is, I posted something about this on Instagram, but if things aren't going your way at your usual stake, I think it's important to drop down and definitely should be able to move through the levels forward and backward and with relative ease, and not have your ego get in the way of moving down a level, especially if you can use a bit of a confidence session, looking to book a win, get your head in the right place. Stepping down in stakes is a good way to do that. So let's take a look at some 2-5 hands from the Wynn. And in this first hand, look down at ace king of clubs from under the gun +1. Make it 20 to go, pretty standard raise size, and get 2 calls. The flop comes pretty good for us. Ace 10-3 with 2 diamonds. I make it 45 to go. And right off the bat, you can look at my sizing there, I think. You can size pretty big here. I think at least 3/4 pot is the way to go here. If someone else has a top pair, it's not going to matter too much what size you choose. They're probably going to call. If someone has a flush draw, they're going to call no matter what size you choose. And if someone has, say, a middling pair like pocket 9s, pocket 8s, they're probably going to fold those hands no matter what size you choose. So you might as well get max value versus top pairs and flush draws. So 45 to go, and both players make the call. So 3 ways to a turn card. It's a really good card. It's an offsuit 4, so it shouldn't change anything whatsoever. Often there can be a temptation to check here, just out of fear of a better hand, random ace X getting there. But I think it's pretty important to not do that. I think it's important to just keep betting here. Bet again, 115 this time. The player in the cutoff goes into the tank and thinks for a while, and he's only got about $300 or $350 total. And after thinking for a while, he jams it in there. Player on the button folds, obviously snap call here, never getting away from any sort of hand in this spot with these stack sizes. So off to a river card. It's another ace, offsuit ace. He shows us ace 8. offsuit, I think. So we're going to win this one. And again, pretty important to keep betting there, because oftentimes you're going to be against an ace. Oftentimes you're going to be against a flush draw. Those are the most likely two holdings from those two opponents. So if we do check there on the turn, there is a pretty decent chance that the turn is going to check through with a player holding a weaker ace. And in this instance, tough for him to get away with that stack size a little bit. Sometimes players are going to feel a little bit inclined to sort of just go with it with the stack size that they have, and also protect against those flush draws. So yeah, that one worked out. Even though it looks really straightforward, there's a couple things to take away there with bet sizing, I think, and just not playing too weak, too passive, too afraid. In this next hand, we're playing six-handed. Folds to the cutoff, who opens for $20. The button makes the call, and I am in the big blind with pocket kings. Pretty standard 3-bet here. I make it 100 to go. Normally when I'm out of position, I will make it 4 times the initial raise and 1 additional X for every caller in between the initial raiser and myself. So 100 to go here. The initial raiser makes the call and the button folds. So heads up to a flop, which does not come in our favor. It comes ace high. I check it over to him, and my opponent bets $200. So it's pretty sizable bet size there. It's pretty close to the size of the pot, and normally I would just check call here, but when he picks that sizing, it seems like it's going to be tough to call down here and not have it cost a bunch of money. So if we do happen to call there on the flop, we're hoping it just goes check, but I think having red kings here eliminates some of his flush draw potential here. It should favor my range a little bit, being the pre-flop raiser, but I do know this player a little bit, have some history with him, so just decided to let it go. Even though it might be a little weak, just check folding to the 1 bet. When he picks that bigger sizing, just decided to let it go. Again, it could look maybe a little bit standard to some people, but I think it's these little intricacies, these things such as bet sizing, that often make a big difference in the end. In this next hand, I have the button straddle on, and it's not something I'll do regularly, but it's very lineup dependent. If the button straddle is going to start affecting people's ranges, they're going to start tightening up, and out of fear of playing out of position, then I won't put the button straddle on. But if I'm in a lineup where I don't think it's going to matter, people are going to play their hands no matter what, then I might button straddle occasionally. So in this hand, that's kind of the situation. I put the button straddle on, and we see a middle position limp, the big blind calls, and we look down at pocket aces. Pretty sweet situation there. So I go ahead and make it 50 to go. Middle position player makes the call. So heads up to a flop this time. Queen 10-10 rainbow. Checks it over to me, and this time it's a pretty dry flop. Some straight draws available, sure. Some 1 pair holdings, such as Queen X, available. But I decided to size down a little bit since it's pretty dry, and I make it 40. Middle position player calls. We see a 6 of diamonds on the turn, which brings the second diamond on board. When he checks it over to me, I don't think it's going to be that easy to get 3 streets on this type of a board. So even versus Queen X, they're probably going to find a fold on the river. So I just decided to check it back and try and protect against 10X. Try and get some value on the river if possible. River comes a total brick, and he grabs $200 worth of chips and slides it out pretty quickly. Not too much choice here, having under up my hand, down bet the flop, check back on the turn. Definitely have to call here, even though when they grab a handful of chips like that, it doesn't look too good too often, but obviously not going to fold the aces here. So I make the call, and we get shown pocket 6s. So pretty unfortunate there. Some run bad, get the aces cracked. If I bet a little bigger on the flop, maybe he folds it, maybe not. Honestly, after watching this opponent, I didn't know at the time, but after watching this opponent later on, I don't think so. He probably would have called anyway. So don't think there was too much I could have done. Happy that I checked back on the turn there and keep the pot somewhat reasonably small. Run bad, a little bit of run bad there. In this next hand, no straddle on. Under the gun player limps. I look down at pocket kings this time, another premium hand. So we're going up to $25 this time. Limper makes the call, so heads up to a flop. And by the way, this is the same player who I just played the previous hand with. Cracked my aces and heads up this time to a flop. This one comes 6-6-7 rainbow. He checks, happy to put out a bet here. I make it 35. Lots of hands that can continue here. And indeed, he makes the call. So off to a turn card. Turns an offsuit 8, full rainbow on board now. Checks it over to me again. No reason to stop betting here since I think a lot of hands can pick up a pair plus straight draw now. I don't see a 7 folding. I don't see a hand like 8-7, 9-8, 9-7, 5-7. Lots of hands, lots of limp calling hands pre-flop that can continue here. So try to get some more value here. I bet $95. He's got 260 in his stack. He decides to go with it, jams it all in there. Obviously losing to some hands, but the way I've seen this player play, not doing anything other than making the call here with pocket kings. River shouldn't change too much too often, and he shows us 4-5 offsuit for the turn straight. So, same player in the same session manages to pull off the cracking aces, followed by cracking the kings in almost back-to-back hands. He lost some chips in between those two hands, so the damage is a little bit minimized due to him being kind of short-stacked in both of these hands. Further silver lining is that they're limp calling with 4-5 offsuit, and what did he have? I don't even remember what he had, but could be going a little bit better. It could be going a little bit better, not going to lie. What can you do? Keep firing. So even though I was definitely feeling a little bit discouraged at this point, still feeling pretty focused. I think, interestingly enough, I was playing online lately. As mentioned, the Nevada and New Jersey pools merged, and just playing a lot of hands and seeing a lot of things happen in short order online just sort of helps with these run bad situations. It's definitely frustrating, but it also helps in just staying focused and not deviating from the plan, knowing that there are more hands to come, more premium hands, and more often than not, those premium hands are going to hold up. So just keeping after it, and I'm buckled in for like a proper session last night. I wasn't planning on going anywhere, and was just going to stay focused and grind it out until I got too tired, but was there to stay. Still relatively early in the night, and when I say early, I mean 11 or maybe midnight. And in the next hand, the under the gun player opens for 20. I flat ace queen of clubs right behind. Don't think there's too much reason to put in the 3-bet that early position versus early position, and don't want to face a 4-bet with this hand because it wouldn't be fun folding ace queen of clubs. It's too pretty. There's another call behind me, and there is a 3-bet after that. The button makes it 80 to go. Player on my right folds, and again, like I said, too pretty of a hand to fold, so I want to see a flop. I make the call, and the player behind me folds. So we're going heads up to a flop this time, which comes ace, deuce, 3, all spades. I check it over to the initial raiser, who puts out a bet. Down bets it a little bit, bets $60, and he's only got maybe $300 total in his stack. So it's an interesting spot because I think if I flat call here, decent chance he's just going to check behind with like pocket jacks with a spade, pocket queens with a spade, pocket kings with a spade, pocket tens with a spade, something like that. Sure, he might check those hands on the flop sometimes, but it's tough to say what other players are going to do with various holdings, various parts of their range. My hand is pretty good, and I'm just going to have to, I think, check call it off. If I check call here on the flop and the turn comes a brick, I'm probably just going to have to go with it anyway. I think it's a little bit too good to just check fold. And so all that being said, I need to protect my equity a little bit against a spade. If he has a hand like pocket jacks, no spade, then a spade coming on the turn would kill all that action for me. It's interesting though because he should probably be folding those hands to a jam anyway. So just going to go with it here since the stack sizes are pretty shallow. I go ahead and jam it in there. My opponent snap calls, so not looking too good in this situation. Once again, turn is a brick. River's the king of spades, looking like further bad news here. And I go ahead and show, and my opponent shakes his head, and he mucks his hand. Surprisingly, my opponent cannot beat the ace queen of clubs here. Not too sure what happened there. I guess he just put me on a very narrow range of a spade holding, or maybe he had ace jack with no spade himself. Surprisingly, despite that not very favorable river card for our hand, we take this one down. All right, one more interesting hand here coming towards the end of the night. Wrap this one up. Managed to claw back to a little bit above even, a little bit in the green at the moment before this hand comes up. And in this hand, I have the under the gun straddle on. So once again, my sort of thoughts on straddling, also very good when deep. Over $1,500 effective here. That's 300 big blinds. It's the biggest 2-5 game in town, and there's some bigger stacks on the table. I think that makes for good straddling opportunities since there's still pretty deep effective stacks, even with a $10 third blind out there. So that's my thinking when I put the straddle on. Folds around to the small blind, who puts in a raise to $45. The big blind calls, and I look down at pocket sevens. I make the call here as well. We're off to a flop 3 ways, which comes pretty favorable for us for the pocket sevens. 7 deuce deuce flop full house here. Small blind checks, big blind checks. And interesting decision here. Could obviously check behind having a hammer lock on the hand. But that being said, I think there's some opportunities here where my opponent can call with a decent sized range.
The flop shouldn't improve anybody too often. Granted, I can have a pair such as 8s, 9s, even 6s, something like that, where I'm betting to sort of try and deny equity. But a lot of those hands are going to have 2 overs at worst, so you can easily make the call there. Other hands can call, such as flush draws, etc. So I go ahead and put out a bet, even though we're often crushing everybody in this situation. I bet $60, and the initial raiser in the small blind folds pretty quick, but the big blind makes the call. Very good news here. Would be very disappointed with all those thoughts if both players ended up folding. So happy to see some continuation here, and the turn comes the 8 of hearts, which brings a second flush draw on board. He checks it over to me, and again, another decision to be had, but I don't think I want to just check back here. I want to keep my foot on the gas a little bit, try and build some pots. I think that's sort of generally the strategy when you're playing 1-2 and 2-5. Make good hands, try and build pots. People don't like folding that often, even though I don't think this opponent is bad by any stretch. I think he's actually a pretty decent player. So even though I have respect for him, I still want to just keep betting, keep building a pot there. I can certainly understand checking back here on the turn, give a free card to flush draws, give a free card to a hand like pocket 6s, 5s, 4s, 3s. But I just decided to try and keep building the pot. I put out another bet. I bet 130 this time. Once again, my opponent makes the call. So again, very good news, unless he happens to have a hand like pocket 8s, of course. We are beating pretty much everything else. Pocket deuces too, that's unlikely. So we're off to a river, and it's the 10 of hearts. So the backdoor flush comes in. He checks it over to me, and I'm deciding on a bet of $320 this time. Could maybe even size a little bit bigger there, since I'm going to have a lot of busted diamond draws, and I could bet maybe a polarized sizing there. I don't know if he's going to expect me to have a deuce that often, so it's a little bit, could easily be pretty questionable in his mind. Anyway, he's well into the tank, thinking for a really long time, and he shows me his hand, which is ace 10 of diamonds, I think. I actually didn't get a very good look at it. I think that's what he had, though. So he had the flush draw and river top pair, thinking for a really long time. It's tough for me, when he has the ace 10 of diamonds, I think it's a little bit tough for me to have too many flush draws, although there are other ones available. So after thinking about it for a very long time, he eventually talks himself into the 1 chip call, tosses the 1 chip out there to signify a call, and that's good news. So we're going to win a pretty decent sized pot there towards the end of the night. Some run good after decent amount of run bad comes our way. We end up playing for somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 hours in this session. Proper cash game session in Las Vegas, in the usual sense of the words, and into the game for $1,500. Onto the game for exactly $2,200. So we book a profit of $700. Obviously, booking a win over 100 big blinds is great. But anytime you play a session where you get pocket kings cracked, pocket aces cracked, and things aren't going your way, and you still manage to book a win of $700 in a 2-5 game, it's a pretty good moral victory, and definitely something to take away. Good session last night, and back to it. Off to edit this video, and then back to the usual drill. More cash games, just sort of getting ready for the World Series. But gonna be on the grind between now and then. That's the general plan going forward here, and we'll be in Vegas for the most part. Maybe minus 1 night, since Busi's birthday on the 15th. So don't forget to wish Busi a happy birthday, especially on the 15th. All right, should we fly the drone around here just for the hell of it?